Have you ever woken up to the sound of your own heartbeat whispering someone else's name? I have, and the name it whispered wasn't mine. The first time it happened was 3 weeks after I moved to Raven Hollow. Population 312. A quiet mountain town that didn't even show up on most maps. I'd taken a teaching job at the local high school after losing my apartment in Chicago. My psychiatrist had called it a fresh start, but on the very first night, I realized something was wrong with this place. I arrived just before sunset. The mountains looked like enormous black teeth biting into the dying light. The road twisted through pine trees so tall they blotted out the sky. There was no signal, no noise, just the engine of my old Ford and the endless forest swallowing me whole. By the time I reached the town sign, "Welcome to Raven Hollow, where night never ends," the sun had disappeared completely. The first thing that struck me was the silence. No crickets, no wind, no sound of life at all. Just stillness. When I pulled up to the boarding house where I'd rented a room, the woman waiting for me didn't speak at first. She just stood on the porch holding a candle. "Mr. Lewis?" she asked finally, her voice trembling. "Yes," I said. "Thomas Lewis. I spoke with you on the phone last week." Her eyes darted behind me toward the dark woods. "You came after sunset," she whispered. "You shouldn't have done that." Inside, the boarding house smelled like dust and old books. Every shadow seemed to move just a little when I wasn't looking directly at it. She introduced herself as Mrs. Calloway, an elderly widow who ran the house for passing travelers. There were 5 rooms upstairs, all empty except mine. "There aren't many new faces in Raven Hollow," she said, setting down a cup of tea in front of me. "People here like things to stay the same." I smiled politely. "I'll try to fit in." Her eyes flickered up. "I hope you can. People who don't, well, they tend to leave, or vanish." That night I unpacked my things and tried to sleep. But just after midnight something woke me. A sound. It wasn't a voice exactly, more like a whisper leaking through the walls. A faint rhythmic murmur that rose and fell with my heartbeat. It said one word. Over and over. "Thomas." My name. I sat up, heart hammering. The sound stopped. The room was empty, bathed in cold moonlight. I told myself it was just my imagination, the stress of moving. But deep down, I knew that voice hadn't come from my head. The next morning I walked to the school. The town looked even stranger in daylight. All the houses were old, Victorian style with dark wood and thick curtains. Every window I passed had someone watching from behind it. Not openly staring, just the faint movement of a curtain, the reflection of an eye. At school, things weren't better. The students were pale, quiet, and unnervingly polite. When I asked questions, they all gave the same flat answers as if rehearsed. Except one. Her name was Elena Vale. 16. Dark hair, gray eyes, always sitting at the back near the window. When I asked her to read aloud in class, she didn't look at the book. She just looked at me and recited the line perfectly, word for word. "Have you read this before?" I asked. Her lips curved slightly. "I've read you before," she said. That night, the whispers came again, but this time, they didn't stop at my name. They said another. "Elena." I got up, sweating, and looked out the window. The street was empty, except for one figure standing across the road. It was Elena, still, silent, looking straight up at my window. I blinked, and she was gone. The next morning I tried to find her at school, but her seat was empty. The principal, Mr. Corbin, said she'd taken ill. "She does that sometimes," he said. "It's better to leave her be." When I pressed further, his tone shifted, cold and final. "Mr. Lewis, this town runs on respect. Don't pry into things that don't concern you." I nodded, but my curiosity burned. That afternoon I decided to walk to the edge of town, where I'd seen an old church from the road. It was abandoned, windows shattered, the steeple broken. The doors creaked open with a groan that echoed into the empty nave. Inside, The air was colder. Dust swirled like mist. And carved into the wall behind the altar were dozens of names, etched in deep scratches. The newest name was mine. I stumbled back, heart racing. That's when I saw her, Elena, standing in the corner of the church, her face half hidden by shadow. "Why is my name here?" I demanded. She tilted her head. "Because you were chosen." "Chosen for what?" Her eyes flashed red for a split second, like catching sunlight off a blade. "To stay when the others leave." Before I could speak, a sound rose outside, the low rumble of many footsteps. I turned toward the doorway and saw them. Dozens of townspeople walking silently toward the church, carrying candles. Mrs. Calloway was among them. "Elena," I whispered. "What is this?" "They can't hear you," she said. "They only hear him." "Who?" "The one who sleeps beneath," she murmured. "The one who gave us the night." The townspeople stopped at the doorway, faces blank, eyes glowing faintly in the candlelight. Mrs. Calloway raised her hand and spoke a single word. "Feed." Elena's expression changed. Fear, then hunger. Her lips parted, revealing sharp ivory fangs that glistened in the dark. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut. The candles flickered out. And in the suffocating blackness I heard her voice right behind my ear. "You shouldn't have come after sunset." Have you ever felt your home exhale? Not the creak of wood, not the hum of wind, but something alive, breathing just beneath the floorboards. That's when you realize the house isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you. When I woke up, my mouth tasted of iron. The air in my room was damp and cold, as though the walls had absorbed the night and exhaled it back into me. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed the entire thing. The church, the whispers, Elena's red eyes, the crowd of silent townspeople. But then I looked down at my hands. There was dirt under my fingernails. My shoes were caked in dried mud. And on my wrist, faint but visible, was a small puncture mark, like 2 needles pressed into the skin. I sat there for a long time, the morning light stretching across the floorboards, catching on particles of dust that floated in lazy spirals. The silence in that boarding house felt unnatural, oppressive, like the entire building was holding its breath, waiting for me to move. I heard the floorboards creak outside my room. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Mrs. Calloway's voice came muffled through the door. "Mr. Lewis, breakfast is ready." Her tone was cheerful, too cheerful. I forced myself to answer, "I'll be right down." When I opened the door, she was already gone. Only the faint scent of candle wax lingered in the hall. The dining room was set perfectly, eggs, toast, coffee, but everything was cold. The steam had long stopped rising. The curtains were drawn tight, blocking the morning sun. I could feel the house vibrating faintly, like it was humming just beyond the edge of hearing. "Rough night?" Mrs. Calloway asked when she finally appeared, moving silently from the kitchen doorway. Her pale eyes darted to the bandage I'd wrapped around my wrist. I hesitated. "I think I might have sleepwalked. Ended up outside somehow." She smiled, a slow, deliberate stretch of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh yes. People in Raven Hollow tend to wander at night. The town calls to them." I tried to laugh it off. "The town calls?" Her expression didn't change. "It doesn't like strangers, but it likes you. That's unusual." The words clung to me for the rest of the day. The town likes me. The longer I stayed, the more I felt it. A strange pull beneath everything. The air here didn't feel like normal air. It felt thick, charged with something electric. The townspeople watched me differently now, with something that looked like pity or hunger. That afternoon, I passed the old general store and saw something that made my skin crawl. A missing persons board. Every poster was old, yellowed, faded by sun and time. The names stretched back decades, dozens of faces, all people who had once come to Raven Hollow and never left. The most recent photo caught my eye. A man named Richard Hale, a substitute teacher who'd come here in 1979. He looked exactly like me. Same build, same hair, even the same crooked smile. The caption below said, "Last seen entering the Callaway boarding house." I stumbled back, heart pounding. The old shopkeeper, a hunched man with cataract-clouded eyes, looked up from the counter. "You new in town?" he asked. "Yeah," I said carefully. "Thomas Lewis, teaching at the high school." He nodded slowly, wiping the counter with a trembling hand. "We've had a few teachers before. None lasted long." "What happened to them?" The old man's cloudy eyes lifted to mine. "They stayed after sunset." Before I could ask more, the bell above the door jingled and the room went cold. Mrs. Callaway stepped inside, smiling her same hollow smile. "There you are, Mr. Lewis," she said. I was beginning to worry. The old man's hands froze mid-wipe. He didn't look at her, didn't even breathe. "I was just," I began, but she interrupted. "It's time to come home." Her tone was polite, but there was something commanding beneath it, something that slid into my spine like a whisper. Without meaning to, I followed. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind outside had stopped, but the house hadn't. I could hear it. Faint, steady breathing. Sometimes the floorboards pulsed under my feet like a heartbeat. The wallpaper moved slightly, like something was crawling beneath it. I tried to tell myself it was the pipes, the settling of old wood. But then I heard it. My name, whispered again, in the same rhythm as before. Only this time, it wasn't coming from inside my head. It was coming from inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the plaster. At first I heard nothing. Then a faint, wet rustling sound. And beneath it, voices. Many voices murmuring together in a language I couldn't recognize. My pulse raced. I backed away, but the whispering followed, slithering along the walls, crawling closer. The light bulb flickered, then went out. The air turned icy. Something moved in the corner of the room, a shadow that didn't belong to me. I fumbled for the lamp, but it wouldn't turn on. The only light came from the thin slit under the door where I saw bare feet standing outside. Someone was there, waiting. I froze, barely breathing. The feet shifted slightly. Then a hand slid under the door, long, pale fingers dragging across the floorboards, searching. They stopped just short of my foot. Then a soft, almost pleading whisper. "Thomas, open the door, please." It was Elena's voice. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move." But something else, deeper, more primal, urged me to open it. I stepped forward, hands trembling, and turned the knob just slightly. The door creaked open an inch. And through that gap I saw her. Her eyes were wide, almost glowing in the dark. Her lips were pale, trembling. "They'll hear me," she whispered. "I don't have much time." "Elena, what's happening?" I asked. "They've chosen you, the town, the thing beneath it. You're becoming one of us." I shook my head, stepping back. "No, I'm not. I'm leaving tomorrow." "You can't leave," she said, voice breaking. "No one leaves. Not after they drink the air." "What does that mean?" She looked at me with a kind of terrible sadness. "You've already started, Thomas. That's why you can hear the walls breathe." Before I could respond, a noise echoed down the hall, the sound of heavy, dragging footsteps. Elena's eyes widened with fear. "They're coming," she hissed. "Hide the mark. Don't let them see your blood." Then she was gone, vanished into the shadows as the footsteps grew louder. Mrs. Callaway appeared at my door, candle in hand. Her face looked different now, not human exactly. Her eyes shimmered faintly red in the flame's glow. "Couldn't sleep again?" she asked softly. I swallowed hard. "Just a nightmare." She nodded slowly, her gaze flicking to my wrist. "Dreams can be powerful here. They show us what we crave." "What we crave?" She smiled, baring teeth too sharp for her age. "You'll understand soon." The candle flickered. and in that brief shadow I could have sworn her reflection disappeared from the mirror behind her. When she turned to leave, I finally saw it. The faint movement in her shadow, stretching across the wall, crawling upward toward the ceiling, like a living thing separate from her body. And when the door closed, the whispering started again, louder this time, coming from beneath the floorboards. I lifted the rug, revealing old wood darkened by age, and something else. Carved into the floor in looping letters that shimmered in the candlelight was a single name, mine. Again, and beneath it, fresh words had been carved into the wood as though by invisible hands. The blood remembers. The floorboards pulsed once beneath my hand, a single slow heartbeat, and then I heard a sound from under the bed. Something moving, breathing. I crouched down, lifted the blanket, and saw eyes staring back at me, eyes that looked exactly like my own. There's a moment when you stop fearing the dark and start fearing yourself instead. Because sometimes the monster isn't outside the door. Sometimes it's waiting in your reflection. The eyes beneath my bed didn't blink. They just stared back at me, wide and glassy, mirroring my every breath. For a moment I thought it was some kind of hallucination, exhaustion or madness, or maybe both. But then the thing moved, a faint scrape against the floorboards. The eyes vanished. I stumbled backward, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear. The air in the room thickened, the temperature dropping as a faint mist began to curl from beneath the bed. It was cold, too cold, and it carried with it a metallic scent. The smell of blood. I grabbed the lamp, flicked it on, and froze. The wall across from me was no longer bare. It was wet, streaked with something dark that glistened in the light. At first I thought it was water from the leaking roof. Then I saw the color, deep crimson still dripping. There, written in the same shaky, carved handwriting as before, were 5 words that made my stomach twist. "You've been here before, Thomas." I didn't sleep that night, I couldn't. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the town outside. Nothing moved, not even the trees. The moon hung low, blood orange and swollen, as though it was watching me too. Around 3 in the morning, the whispering began again, but this time it wasn't from the floor or the walls. It was inside my head, clear and commanding. "The church, go back, remember." I told myself not to listen, that following voices never ends well. But there was something about that whisper. A pull, like a hook in my mind, dragging me toward the truth I wasn't sure I wanted to know. By 3:30 I was outside. The cold bit through my jacket, and fog curled along the streets like breath from something sleeping just beneath the earth. Every house was dark, every door shut tight. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the town was awake, watching. When I reached the church, the front doors stood open. Inside, candles burned, though I'd seen no one light them. The air smelled of rust and damp stone. And there, in the center of the aisle, was Elena. She was kneeling beside the altar, pale as moonlight, her hands pressed together as though praying. Her eyes flicked up when I entered, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw something human there. "You came," she said softly. "I had to," I replied. "You said I was chosen. You said I was becoming one of you. What does that mean?" She stood slowly, her movements unnaturally graceful, not like a person, but like a dream trying to remember how to walk. "It means the blood remembers," she whispered. "This isn't your first time in Raven Hollow, Thomas." I frowned. "What are you talking about? I just moved here." Her gaze hardened. "No. You came before, in another life, and you died here." I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. "That's impossible." She stepped closer, her eyes glinting in the candlelight. "The town keeps what it loves. Every drop of blood spilled here returns to the soil, and when it's time, the soil gives it back." I took a step back, heart hammering. You're saying I was buried here? Elena nodded. And now the ground has remembered you. Before I could ask more, a low rumble echoed through the church, like thunder beneath the floor. The candles flickered violently. Elena's expression changed, twisting into fear. He's waking, she whispered. You shouldn't have come here alone. The floorboards cracked open at the base of the altar. Dust billowed upward as something moved beneath, shifting, writhing, as if the earth itself were breathing. Elena, what is that? I shouted. She turned to me, eyes glowing faintly red. The reason Raven Hollow exists, the one who sleeps beneath. Then the ground split open. What rose from the darkness wasn't human. At first I thought it was a man, tall, cloaked, skin pale as bone, but as it stepped into the candlelight I saw the truth. Its face was too smooth, too perfect, like marble carved into an imitation of life. Eyes black as oil, mouth too wide, and when it smiled, I saw rows of teeth like shards of glass. Elena fell to her knees. My lord, she whispered. The creature looked at her, then at me. You brought him. His voice wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the air like thunder trapped in glass. Elena trembled. He returned, my lord, just as you said. The creature moved closer to me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He leaned forward and I felt his breath, cold and sweet, like winter and rot. Do you know what you are, Thomas Lewis? He asked. I shook my head. He smiled wider. You are the echo of what was taken, the memory of a man who died screaming in my arms 100 years ago. You are his blood, given form. My vision blurred. No, I'm alive. Alive? The creature chuckled, the sound low and terrible. You think you're alive because I allow you to be, because the town remembers your fear, your pain, your blood. Elena reached for me, tears streaking her pale face. Run, she whispered, before he takes you back. I didn't wait. I turned and bolted for the door. The fog outside had thickened, swallowing everything. The road was gone. The houses seemed to twist and shift as I ran, their shapes changing. Taller, sharper, wrong. I could hear the creature's voice behind me, calm, distant, echoing inside my head. You can't run from yourself, Thomas. You never could. The more I ran, the more familiar everything felt. The streets, the turns, the hollow echo of my own footsteps. It was like I'd been here before, every nightmare looping back to the start. When I finally reached the boarding house, the front door was already open. Candlelight spilled out, flickering like a heartbeat. Mrs. Calloway stood at the base of the stairs, smiling. Welcome home, she said. I froze. What do you mean, home? She walked closer, her hands clasped neatly in front of her. You rented this room in 1987 and again in 1952 and again in 1910. You always come back to us. Raven Hollow calls, and the blood remembers. I backed away, shaking my head. You're insane. She laughed softly, not cruelly, but almost with pity. Oh, Thomas, you still think you're new here. She reached into her apron and pulled out something small and silver, a locket. She handed it to me. Inside was an old photograph, a man standing in front of the same boarding house smiling, same build, same hair, same face. Me. The date scratched beneath it read, April 17th, 1887. I dropped it. My hands trembled. My mind couldn't keep up with what my eyes were seeing. You see? Mrs. Calloway whispered. The blood always finds its way home. The lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the house, I heard the creak of a door opening, followed by the soft, dragging sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, coming up from the basement. Mrs. Calloway's smile faded. She turned toward the noise, her expression suddenly grim. He's here. Who? I whispered. The one who sleeps beneath, she said, her voice trembling now. He's coming for you this time. The floor beneath my feet vibrated as though something massive was moving under the house, scraping against the foundation. Dust rained from the ceiling. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing harder, faster. I turned to run up the stairs, but the hallway stretched impossibly long, like the house itself was changing, twisting me deeper inside. The lights went out. Total darkness. And then, from behind me, I heard the creature's voice, close enough to feel its cold breath against my ear. "Do you remember dying, Thomas? You don't realize you've been haunted until you understand the ghost is you. And in Raven Hollow, every echo has a name. Mine just happens to bleed." The voice was right behind me. Too close, too intimate. I could feel the cold of its breath seeping into my skin, whispering through my bones. "Do you remember dying, Thomas?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was too tight, my legs trembling. The air was so thick it felt like breathing through water. When I turned around, there was nothing but darkness, vast and suffocating. Then, faintly, a flicker of light appeared at the far end of the hall, a candle flame wavering in the shadows. I moved toward it without thinking, each step echoing unnaturally loud, as if the house were hollow beneath me. The hall seemed endless, stretching and warping, the walls pulsing faintly like the inside of a throat. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of that slow, unnatural pulse. And with each step, the whispering began again. Not from the walls this time, but from inside my chest. He remembers. The blood remembers. It's time. When I reached the candle, it was sitting on the floor beside a door I hadn't seen before. The wood looked ancient, older than the house itself. No knob, just a handle wrapped in rusted iron. Something inside me screamed, "Don't open it," but my hand moved anyway, as if someone else were controlling it. The door opened to darkness, and then I smelled it. Damp earth, rot, and the unmistakable scent of blood soaked deep into the soil. I stepped inside. The stairs led downward, deeper than any basement should go. The air grew colder with each step, thick with humidity and decay. When I finally reached the bottom, my light barely touched the edges of the space. The walls weren't made of stone or wood. They were rooted. Twisting, black roots that pulsed faintly with red light, as though carrying blood instead of sap. At the center of the room stood a stone altar. Carved into it was a name. Thomas Lewis, born 1849, died 1887. My knees almost buckled. I stumbled forward, touching the stone. It was cold, too cold, and wet. My fingertips came away red. I looked closer and realized the altar wasn't just stone, it was flesh. Something shifted in the darkness behind me. I turned, the candle trembling in my hand, and saw movement. Slow, deliberate. A shape rising from the shadows, tall and gaunt. Its eyes burned with dim crimson light. "You came back," it said, voice echoing in every direction at once. "After all these years?" "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. It smiled, a horrifyingly familiar expression. "You called me your father once, before you betrayed me." I froze. "That's impossible. My father died." "In 1887, the creature interrupted, "by your hand." My stomach twisted. "No." "Oh yes," it whispered, stepping closer. "You wanted freedom. You wanted the town to end. You killed me, and with your last breath, cursed my name. But blood does not forget. It brought you back. It always does." The memories began to claw their way out of me. Flashes of faces, fire, screams. A man tied to an altar. My hands shaking, holding a blade. The smell of smoke and blood, and the echo of my own voice screaming his name. "Father?" The candle went out. The darkness became absolute. I felt him moving around me, circling. "When you killed me, the town fell asleep," he whispered. "But when your bones touched its soil again, it woke. It began to feed. That's why you're here again, Thomas, to finish what you began." I backed away blindly, searching for the stairs, but the ground beneath me shifted. Soft, sinking, like mud. I looked down and realized the floor wasn't solid at all. It was bodies, Hundreds of them, pale, twisted, their faces half buried in the dirt. Some of them moved, eyes fluttering open, and every face looked like mine. I screamed. The ground pulsed once, and all those faces began to whisper in unison. My name over and over, their voices layered like a storm. Thomas, Thomas, Thomas. Something inside me broke. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, the whispers drilling into my skull. Stop, I shouted, but the voices only grew louder. Then, suddenly, silence. A single voice rose above the rest. Elena's. Remember, she whispered, remember who you were. When I opened my eyes again, the darkness was gone. I was standing in the middle of the old church, daylight streaming through the shattered windows. Dust danced in the light like ashes. It felt wrong, quiet, too quiet. Elena? I called. No answer. I turned toward the altar and froze. The stone slab there was cracked, but beneath the fracture I could see the faint outline of something buried. A skeleton. The skull was split in two, and on its forehead carved deep into the bone were the words, "The blood remembers." Then came the footsteps. Slow, dragging, deliberate. Mrs. Calloway stepped out from behind the pews, holding a bundle of papers in her arms. "You shouldn't have gone down there," she said quietly. "He'll find you now." "What is happening to me?" I demanded. She hesitated, eyes glistening with tears that didn't fall. "You're remembering too quickly. The town doesn't like that." "The town?" She nodded. "It's alive, Thomas. It's been alive since your father made his covenant. Every drop of blood spilled here feeds it. It keeps us young, eternal, but only if we serve him." I took a step closer. "And you? Do you serve him?" Her lips trembled. "Once I did, but now, I think I've served long enough." She handed me the bundle of papers, old photographs, letters, journal pages written in my own handwriting, but the ink was brown, aged, almost a century old. "I kept these," she whispered, "because I knew one day you'd come back again." I opened one of the letters. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakably mine. It read, "If anyone finds this, tell them not to come to Raven Hollow. Tell them the town is a wound that never closes. Tell them the blood will call them back again and again until the whole world drowns in its memory." I looked up at Mrs. Calloway. "How many times has this happened?" Her voice broke. 13. The ground trembled beneath us, a deep rumbling sound like something enormous stirring in its sleep. Mrs. Calloway's eyes widened. "He's waking. You have to go, now." "I can't leave," I shouted. "There's no road out." "There is," she said, "but it only appears to those who stop running." "What does that mean?" She gave a sad, tired smile. "It means you have to die again." Before I could react, the church doors exploded inward. The creature stepped through the threshold, tall and terrible, his eyes blazing. The shadows recoiled from him like living things afraid to touch his skin. "Enough," he said. "You cannot run from blood, my son." The sunlight through the broken windows dimmed, devoured by clouds that rolled across the sky like ink. Mrs. Calloway turned to me. "Remember what you did last time. Remember the blade." The creature's gaze snapped to her. "You dare defy me?" She didn't move. "I'm tired, Edgar." That name, Edgar, it struck something deep in me. The man from my memories. My father. He moved faster than sight, a blur of shadow and hunger. When he reached her, he sank his teeth into her neck. The sound was wet and final. I screamed her name, but it was too late. Her body crumpled to the floor, eyes open, mouth frozen in a silent prayer. And then he turned to me, blood dripping from his lips. "Come home, Thomas." Something in me snapped. My vision narrowed, heart hammering, and before I knew what I was doing, I grabbed the broken iron cross from the altar. It burned cold in my hand. He smiled. You think that can kill me again? I didn't answer. I drove the cross through my own chest. Pain erupted, white-hot, blinding, and the world shattered like glass. I fell through darkness. Voices screamed around me, thousands of them, all mine. I saw flashes of every death, every lifetime, every return to Raven Hollow. My blood spilled into the earth, and each drop became another me, another echo. The town fed, and fed, and fed. Then, faintly, through the chaos, I heard a single whisper, soft and pleading. Thomas, don't let it end like before. It was Elena's voice. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on cold stone. The air was damp, heavy, filled with the metallic scent of old blood. For a moment, I couldn't remember who I was or how I had gotten there. My vision swam with shadows. I could hear something dripping in the distance, slow, rhythmic, echoing through vast emptiness. Then the memories hit me all at once. The townspeople, the chanting, the thing that rose from beneath the earth. Lucienne Vale, the hunger, the darkness. I pushed myself up, my palms sliding across slick rock. I was underground, far below Raven Hollow. The ceiling above glistened with veins of red light that pulsed like a living heartbeat. The walls were carved with runes I couldn't understand, their patterns shifting when I looked too long. It wasn't just a cave. It was a cathedral of blood, alive and breathing around me. Somewhere deeper within, a low hum vibrated through the stone. It wasn't mechanical. It felt organic, like a creature's chest rising and falling. I followed the sound, though every step made my body scream to turn back. The passage narrowed, the walls closing in like a throat swallowing me whole. As I walked, I heard whispers bleeding through the rock. They weren't voices of strangers anymore. They were mine, fragments of my own thoughts spoken aloud before I could think them. You shouldn't have come here. You were his from the beginning. You never left the well. I stumbled forward, clutching my head. The whispers grew louder, then shifted, deepening into a familiar tone. Lucian. Thomas, he said, the words slithering through my mind like smoke. You've wandered long enough in borrowed flesh. It's time to remember. I stopped cold. Remember what? What you were before you forgot. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber illuminated by the faint red glow of an underground river. The water shimmered like liquid garnet, its surface perfectly still. In the center stood an altar carved from bone, and upon it lay a body, pale, motionless, wrapped in a tattered coat. My coat. I stared, frozen in disbelief. It was me. My own face, bloodless, eyes open but empty. My hands trembled as I reached toward it, half expecting it to vanish, but it didn't. The skin was cold, solid, real. A voice whispered behind me, "That's what's left of you." I spun around. Elena stood in the shadows, her eyes glowing faintly, her face a mixture of sorrow and exhaustion. "Elena," I breathed. "Where am I? What is this place?" She stepped closer, her expression pained. "This is the heart of Raven Hollow. The well you drank from is just the surface of it. Beneath it lies Lucian Vale's blood, the blood that binds us all. You didn't just drink from him, Thomas. You became one of us." I shook my head violently. "No, I'm not like you. I never—" She cut me off. "You died on the road, remember? 3 miles outside town. Your car crashed when you hit the fog. Mrs. Calloway found your body and offered it to him. He gave you back, not alive, not dead, but caught in between." I staggered back, the chamber spinning. "No, that's not true. I drove into town, I spoke to you. I taught at the school." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You think you did. The mind clings to patterns it understands. Raven Hollow isn't a town anymore, Thomas. It's a feeding ground, an illusion Lucian made from the memories of those he consumes. Every soul here once thought they were new, alive, starting over, until they realized they'd never truly left. Her words hung in the air like the toll of a funeral bell. I looked around, at the pulsing red walls, the veins of light, the shadows moving on their own. And suddenly, I saw it for what it was. Every brick, every structure above ground, every face I'd seen in town was built from flesh, bone, and memory. The entire town was alive, an extension of Lucien's monstrous form, sustained by the blood of those trapped within it. "Elena," I said hoarsely, "why are you helping me?" "Because I loved you once," she whispered. "Before he took me too, before he made me drink." Her voice cracked. "There's a way out, but it will cost more than you can imagine. You must kill him. And to do that, you have to kill what's left of yourself." I looked again at the lifeless body on the altar. My body. "How?" She stepped closer, placing something cold in my hand, a dagger made of black glass, its blade humming softly with energy. "It's carved from the obsidian in the heart of the hollow. Only the blood that was once his can pierce him. That's why he made you. Why he chose you. You're not his victim, Thomas. You're his replacement." The realization hit me like a thunderclap. The whispers in my head, the connection I felt, the dreams, they weren't just control, they were inheritance. He wasn't trying to destroy me. He was preparing to become me. From the shadows, a tall figure began to emerge. Lucien Vale, his skin glistening with the sheen of ancient blood, his eyes black voids that reflected nothing. "Enough," he said. The air rippled with his voice. "She's told you enough lies for one lifetime." Elena stepped between us, trembling. "He knows the truth now, Lucien. It's over." Lucien smiled, a cold, inhuman curl of lips. "The hollow doesn't end, child. It only sheds its skin." In a blur of motion, he reached out, faster than thought, and seized Elena by the throat. She gasped, claws raking his arm, but he didn't flinch. He looked at me over her shoulder, his expression calm, almost fatherly. "You were never meant to run, Thomas. You were meant to feed. Come now. Take what's yours." Elena's eyes met mine, pleading. "Don't let him take you too." Lucien tightened his grip. There was a sickening crack and her body went limp. He dropped her to the ground like an empty shell. Something inside me snapped. Grief, rage, and horror merging into one primal scream. I lunged at him, driving the obsidian dagger toward his chest. He caught my wrist with one hand, holding me in place as easily as a child. His voice was a whisper, yet it filled the entire chamber. "Do you still think you're alive, Thomas? You've been part of me since the first drop. Every heartbeat you hear is mine." I pushed harder, the blade trembling inches from his chest. His skin began to split where the dagger touched, black blood oozing out, burning like acid. His face twisted in fury. The entire cave shuddered, the river of blood roaring to life. "Do it," Elena's fading voice echoed in my mind. "End it." With a final scream, I drove the dagger home. Lucien's roar shook the cavern to its foundation. The walls cracked, the ground split, the river surged upward like a tidal wave. His hands clawed at my shoulders as the black light swallowed us both. I felt myself dissolving, bones melting, skin burning, my consciousness unraveling into darkness. Through it all, I heard him whisper, not in anger, but in satisfaction. "You see, Thomas, I never die. I only change my name." And then everything went silent. Darkness. Endless, heavy darkness. I floated in it for what felt like hours, maybe centuries. No sense of body, no sound but a low, steady pulse echoing through the void. It wasn't until I tried to breathe that I realized I couldn't. There was no air here, no life, no time, only the pulsing beat. Steady, slow, eternal. I tried to remember my name, but the memory slipped through like water through broken fingers. Thomas Lewis. The name didn't feel right anymore. It felt borrowed. It felt dead. Then, through the blackness, a faint red glow flickered to life, like the first breath of dawn after 1,000 years of night. The light grew stronger, revealing a shape forming around me. Bones knitting, skin stretching, eyes burning open. I gasped as air filled my lungs for the first time. Though it didn't taste like air, it tasted like blood, thick and metallic, as if the very world was alive and breathing through me. When my vision cleared, I was standing in the same underground chamber, or what was left of it. The walls had collapsed inward, the once pulsing veins now dim and cracked. The altar was shattered, the river of blood gone still. Lucien Vale's body was nowhere to be seen. Only ash remained where he had stood, swirling faintly in the red gloom. But the dagger, the black obsidian blade, was gone too. I stumbled forward, dizzy, my head pounding with echoes of memories that weren't mine. Images flashed before my eyes, candlelit rituals, faces of strangers through centuries, flames devouring old churches, and always, Lucien Vale, smiling through time, his face changing, his eyes never aging. I clutched my temples, screaming as the images blended with my own memories. Chicago, my car, Elena's face, the whispers in the walls. Everything was merging into one unbearable truth. Lucien hadn't died. He had moved. The blood in my veins pulsed harder, each beat heavier than the last. I could hear it, not inside my chest, but outside, echoing through the tunnels, through the stone, through the world above, the heartbeat of the hollow. My heartbeat. No, I whispered, staggering back. No, you're gone. You're gone. Am I? The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Lucien's tone was calm, amused, the way a father might speak to a frightened child. You carried me, Thomas, you always have. That's why I chose you. The well didn't just bind us, it opened the door. You drove the blade, and when you did, you didn't kill me. You invited me in. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, but not from fear. From power. My veins glowed faintly beneath my skin, red as molten glass. The pulse of the hollow matched my own. You see, the voice murmured, death is a circle. The hollow doesn't end, it only changes hosts. You've taken my place now. You are the keeper of the night. I screamed, striking at the walls until my knuckles split. The stone didn't crack. It bled. Thick, dark fluid oozed from every place I touched, and the ground began to tremble. From the blood-soaked walls, faces began to form, hundreds of them, twisting in agony. The townspeople, Mrs. Calloway, the students, even Elena. Elena! I shouted, reaching for her. Her face pressed outward from the wall, her eyes hollow, her lips barely moving. Thomas, she whispered, her voice fragile as smoke. You have to finish it. You can't let it live again. Not through you. Her hand reached out, translucent, trembling, and touched my chest. A searing pain tore through me. I fell to my knees, gasping. Her hand began to sink into me, her eyes glowing brighter. Let me help you, she said. Let me end it. But before she could finish, Lucien's voice thundered through the chamber, furious and deafening. Enough! The walls exploded in a wave of black energy, hurling her image back into the stone. The room began to collapse, the ceiling cracking open to the night sky above. I stumbled to my feet, choking on dust and ash. Through the chaos, I saw the faint outline of the town above, Raven Hollow, its buildings twisting and warping as if awakening from a long dream. The streets split open, and red light poured upward like fire. The hollow was rising. I ran through the collapsing tunnels, the whispers chasing me like a storm. Every voice I'd ever heard in this cursed town screamed inside my skull. I burst through a final archway and stumbled into the night air. The town was no longer a town. The houses had fused into one massive writhing shape, a cathedral of flesh and shadow that pulsed with my own heartbeat. I fell to my knees on the dirt road where I'd first entered Raven Hollow. The welcome sign still stood, half buried, its words flickering as if written in flame. Welcome to Raven Hollow, where night never ends. The irony hit me like a cruel joke. The night had never ended because it was never meant to. It lived through those who carried it. Through me. Behind me, a voice whispered again. Softer this time. Thomas. I turned. Elena stood there, whole again, her eyes gentle, her face illuminated by the faint light of dawn trying to break through the horizon. Elena, I breathed. How? She shook her head. You don't have much time. The hollow feeds on fear and memory. If you stay, it will use you like it used him. You have to destroy it before the sun rises, before the cycle seals again. How? I asked desperately. Tell me how. She reached into her dress and drew out the obsidian dagger, its blade cracked, but still humming faintly with the same dark energy. You must stab your own heart. Return the blood to the hollow. Only then will it sleep. I stared at the blade, my mind reeling. If I do that, I die. Elena smiled sadly. You already did. Her words broke something in me, not from fear but from understanding. I looked back at the monstrous living town, its form rising like a mountain of bone and sorrow. I could feel it breathing, whispering my name, begging me to come home. I stepped closer. The dagger felt impossibly heavy. My vision blurred with tears as I whispered, I'm sorry, Elena. She nodded. End it, Thomas. And us. I raised the blade, pressed it to my chest, and drove it straight into my heart. A white-hot pain tore through me, and the world screamed. The hollow shrieked, its body twisting and collapsing inward. The red light bled out of the sky, swallowed by the rising sun. I fell backward, the earth shaking beneath me as the town imploded. Houses folding in on themselves, streets cracking open, everything sinking into darkness. For a moment there was peace. Silence. Then, just before the light faded from my eyes, I saw Elena standing over me, smiling, radiant, free. Thank you, she whispered. Now we can rest. And then she was gone. I don't know how long I lay there. When I finally opened my eyes, I was back on the highway 3 miles outside where Raven Hollow had once stood. My car was still there, covered in dust, as if decades had passed. I stumbled toward it, my body weak but alive. In the distance, the mountain was quiet. No sign of the town, no smoke, no life. Only trees and mist. I thought it was over. But when I reached for the door handle, I froze. In the reflection of the car window, I saw my eyes. They weren't brown anymore. They were red. And faintly, from somewhere deep in the woods, a voice whispered, familiar, patient, eternal. Welcome home, Lucien.